been a little while.
Been, yeah, it's been nearly 3 weeks, something like that, I
Hmm.
think, or longer.
Longer, I think. I had
No,
a
longer. Yeah, it's
sailing
been a month.
regatta. Wow.
Yeah, we skipped 2 weeks in a row. Um, just life
Hmm.
got in the way. You said you were on a way on a sailboat
Yep,
1 week.
yep. I was not falling off.
Yeah, and I had mild pregnant wife emergency the week after that.
Hmm.
So things do tend to happen. But the upside of that is lots has happened in the meantime.
Yes,
So
yes.
do you want to tell your little story then?
Yep. So I think. Hang on it. What happened? When was our last conversation?
Oh,
Was it the week before I went
it
away?
was it was the week before you went away on the sailing trip. It was either super early days or right before it all
Hmm.
started.
Yeah. So if we recorded on a Saturday, it would have been just after I'd had my first proper date with the girl I met at the speed dating.
I
And
think it was like a recap thing.
yeah, yeah. So that was all exciting, and it's gone. I'm a semi compulsive overthinker. So that's been doing a
Yes,
few rounds.
we couldn't tell.
Oh, really? Yeah. But it's like it spirals, like it goes out and goes out, or it's like a pendulum decaying. It's like overthink this way, overthink that way. Okay, okay, that's where we're sitting after a while, and I think I'm through over the course of years learning to ride the waves or recognize, oh, I'm in that pattern now. Okay, 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 there we go. Yeah. But so I'd just had that first date, which went great for 2.5 hours of chatting last time. And then when I went away on the sailing regatta, she'd expressed an interest in the boat, so I sent her some pictures of the trip and chatting started. But I was umming and ahhing from our conversations and overthinking things about, okay, I don't want to dive in too much and be sort of over eager because it's like
Mm,
early days. But then chatting started and it went back and forward, and even within the text conversations, it felt like, much to my surprise, in a lot of ways, there was a big spark. And like I'd assumed that building a relationship would be a case of, oh hi, we seem to be compatible. Yes, let's meet up and get to know each other, and then it'll gradually build from there. No, no,
yeah,
no.
this is my experience as well. It's like you meet a person, like when I met my wife, and the feeling of after a couple hours with the person is, oh, I've known you for my whole life. Like I don't think about it. We just speak the same language. I don't feel like there's anything I need to know. You sort of click with someone, I suppose,
Hmm. Yeah,
which
it's
is a
like,
weird thing, particularly for my wife and I, because yeah, it's not what you would have guessed, and you've met her, so you probably still wouldn't guess it from the outside looking in. But I think we speak the same disabled language, whatever it is.
yeah, yeah. You find someone
Um,
with your with a weirdness that's compatible with yours.
yeah, it's like the. I wonder if it has something to do with. I'm trying to think. I don't want to use the word thinking styles because that gets too close to something that's completely bullshit. But I wonder if there's something to do with a similarity in how the brains process information in partners that click well together.
That's a component,
Language,
definitely.
yeah, and then because of that, language becomes something where it's, I don't know, there's no need to interpret
Mm.
the other person. It's just sort of, I know you as if I know me.
Mm.
And then over time, you're just sort of learning things about, oh, I didn't know that you did that thing.
Mm.
But I already feel like I know you, even though I don't know anything about what you have done in your life.
Oh, so I'm just thinking of the stuff that, okay, you can trust someone if you can predict how they will act.
Mm.
So if the patterns by which you understand the world are similar enough in a broad way to someone else's patterns, then you take, oh, that's about how I see the world. And then you sort of add a few data points to that, and it gives you a reasonable approximation. Where someone who's got a totally different thinking style, like speaking a different language, in a sense, you get a few data points and it's just utter confusion. So you
Mm.
can't trust that person. But someone who's got similar patterns, you meet them, you get a few data points, and they reinforce the predictions with more data points that they give back just through normal interaction, and then it clicks.
Yeah. And because all of this is happening in the subconscious, we're not really super aware of it. We just say, like, oh, I clicked with that person, or we get along, or in the inverse, I don't really like that person.
Hmm.
We just sort of think of it as, I like them, I don't like them. We don't think of, well, why?
Hmm. Well, one of the avenues of overthinking that I dived down a couple of times and realized I was totally out of my depth and pulled back a couple of times was astrology, which it's interesting that the only one of the few things that Richard Dawkins and the Archbishop of Canterbury agree on is that astrology's nonsense. But I've found it useful for myself, and I've
You
gotten.
you are selling me on it with that quote. I'm not a big person in astrology, but if Richard Dawkins is opposed and so is the Archbishop, I don't know. That's more intriguing to me now. All of a
Yeah,
sudden.
yeah. Well, uh, any surface level analysis of it will only give. Sort of like, imagine if you had you throw a dart from very high up above a landscape and it lands on water, and then you throw another one and it lands on rock, and you throw another one and it lands in dirt. Okay, well, that's a dirt area, that's a rock area, and that's a water area. That one landed in a puddle, that one landed on a rock that's sticking up in the middle of the lake, and that one landed in the one sort of dirt in the middle of the big expanse of rock. It's like, it's a simple analysis doesn't give you enough to give any sort of useful information, basically. There's dozens of factors that can all affect each other. But that's why I gave someone some money to look at it with an experienced eye.
You did that for this relationship. That might
Yes.
be pushing it a little bit in the overthinking, but I think it's worth noting on the astrology thing is that I've never had, I've never thought super deeply about it. I'm not the kind of person to dismiss things out of hand, but I think most men have the same kind of reaction to the astrology thing. I think it's something like 65% of men see it as a red flag when the date talks about astrology,
Yeah.
and then like women are like 20%. They don't mind because they like it. But it's one of those things that, given my upbringing, the door is left open to.
Mm.
Like there was a lot of numerology and tarot cards and stuff like that when I was a kid. And I've had enough experience in life to know that there's something to those things,
Mm.
but I never investigated it enough to have any form of conclusion.
Mm.
And obviously on the internet you'll have a million people going blah 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 blah. No, there isn't. That's fine. But you're an interesting character in that sense because
An engineer,
yeah,
and
you're like
yeah,
ultra logical, process everything kind of person, and at the same time being like, yeah, I'm super into
well,
astrology. And
actually,
there's
I've
that
heard that there
I
are
think that
more.
gives it more credit in my eyes. It's like
Mm.
when you bring this up, if someone didn't know you, they'd think, oh right, blah, blah, blah. But when someone knows you
Yeah,
and
it's like,
then you
ooh,
bring it up,
hippie.
it's okay, hold on, that's something interesting.
Yeah.
it's very rare for someone who's, this is a joke by the way, borderline autistic, to be super into anything woo woo. They're normally like hard science people.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a really interesting thing to note. And I feel like you probably don't have to defend your ideas around that quite as much as you feel you need to, because
That's
your
nice.
character defends them for you.
Yeah.
I think people have more trust in what you say than someone like me, because I'm willing to just go way out on the fringes,
Yeah.
being the, I'm not autistic then, I guess, whatever weird creative thingy I am.
Yeah.
Whereas you're way more down the middle.
I have heard that if you look at different segments of the population who get into, let's call it esotericism, like the looking behind the curtain of reality, however that's defined.
Spiritual source code.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Apparently, there are a surprising number of engineers through history who've gone down that road because an engineer looks at a thing and thinks, okay, how does it work? And then starts poking it. And if an engineer takes an interest in the subtler aspects of reality and starts seeing some things, oh, that sounds weird, let me look at it and poke it and see, oh, that theory's bunk, it's got these things that don't make any sense with my everyday life, and oh, that one actually makes a whole lot more sense than the normal explanations. Oh, that's weird.
And I think for modern people, they really have to remember that particularly for astrology and things like this, that was a field of mathematics for all of human history. The people who built the pyramids, astrologers. They were all about it. Stargazing and mythologizing and patterns and numerology and geometry was all one discipline. It wasn't something that the dumb white girl on your corner coffee shop was super into back then.
Yeah.
They didn't have any of those anyway.
Yeah. Astronomy split off from astrology. Like, it was one science before. And then it split off.
Mathematics, for sure. Engineering mixed into there too. I think pyramids are an excellent example. Not just pointing at stars, but pointing at particular stars in the astrology. What do you say? Myth, it's not right. Coda, something like that. I've lost that word.
Particular stars that seem to have particular significance.
Yeah, they're not pointing at Sirius.
Just because it's the brightest.
They are. One of them are, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Is that the majority of them are set to the age of Leo stars, ones that are prominent then. Which I think there's a theory about the original Sphinx having the head of a lion to represent the age of Leo. As a marker of this is when it was built, which was a lot earlier than, people think. But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you going way in too deep about astrology with your perspective mate.
Yeah, so dived in too deep, and it's like, this aspect is often found in married couples. This one is really good for intimate relationships. This one leads to massive misunderstandings. This one leads to great understanding. Self-contradictory things. Very common in these sort of things if you actually look at it. And it's like, oh, these things say the opposite. Oh, it must be bunk. No. How many internal conflicts do humans have? It's like, that's what it's mapping out.
Yeah, we're not exactly self-transparent or easily mapped within of ourselves.
Yeah, but the sort of the current state of mind I have regarding the relationship is there's the temptation to get swept along with it and dive in all the way and commit immediately. But for both practical reasons, as probably the main easily point-toable driving force, and for some emotional common sense of let's just get to know each other a bit more than just 2 dates reasons. After my last relationship, I was determined that I wouldn't regret any decision I made moving in a relationship, as in moving forward. that I would be able to look back and say, well, in hindsight, this would have been a better plan, but at the time, what I did wasn't a bad idea. Like, I can't fault my decision making based on what I knew and thought at the time. Yeah. Rather than looking back and saying, you idiot, you should have known better.
Yeah,
Um,
otherwise you'll punish yourself for every decision you've ever made forever. It's
yeah,
not helpful.
yeah. And like, I've seen a lot of good patterns emerging in the communication. Like, the brutal honesty is the wrong term, but it's like honest honesty, if that makes sense. It's like, I like this, I don't like that, and asking tough questions and getting good answers. Not tough
Mm.
in the sense of grilling, but tough in the sense of not holding back on questions that
Mm.
arise.
Not hiding.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not talking to a mask.
yeah, yeah.
It sounds like it's like this is the person, this is the things I actually want, regardless of how that might
Mm.
be
And the answers are nuanced
easily.
as you would expect from real answers.
Mm. Which is all positive signs.
Yeah.
I would like to note that over the past month, I've definitely heard from you a lot less, which was really interesting. The first week or so, there was a lot of nervous texts from you, and then the last 3 weeks has been like, haven't heard from him in a while. What's going on over there? Oh, I can guess.
Well, I think one of the things while I was away at the sailing regatta and sort of trying to work out where I was standing in it, I think I did message you saying that, what was it? There was a lot of flirting happening, which, as a probably slightly autistic person, was rather a weird experience to have someone encourage that and find my attempts at it. I think she said cute. Yeah,
Hmm.
she's got a
I'm not quite sure what to say about that.
she's got a slightly similar remote relationship history to me in the sense of there's only one, and she did her best in it, but then couldn't anymore for various reasons. Um, and
Hmm.
uh, similar sort of level achieved in the relationship. If that's a terrible way to phrase it, but I think it comes across.
Like a commitment level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I'm also bearing in mind in the back of my head that it's like, okay, not everything should be shared in this. Which, being someone who tends to think out loud a bit in conversations, is something to adjust for.
Yes. Uh, I did that once, and I got bit in the ass real hard. I feel like I need to tell the story now just because it's funny. I got given a Christmas gift. I think it was the first Christmas, and it was like a piece of plastic. It was like toy stuff or something. And my brain immediately, being way too honest, was like, here's an interesting conversation thought topic. And I said the worst thing ever, which was, this is cool. How long am I obligated to hold on to this before I can get rid of it without, guilt or pain or, all of that kind of thing? Uh, which went over about as well as you imagine. But it was just the thought of like, yeah, just because it would be an interesting conversation and it is honest, doesn't mean you should say it. There's a bit
Mm.
of even between two people who are completely honest with each other and can be completely honest with each other about everything, each should still play a bit of a game.
Mm.
You don't want to be entirely brutally honest. You're missing. We all want a little bit of a game, and that's part of the excitement and part of the play. And even if you know for sure what you want, what they want, what the result is, that it's set in stone and all of that, you shouldn't proceed like a robot
Mm.
or like it's a contract written in stone. You should still play the game and play your part. Partly because everyone wants that. Sort of like you don't want to deny a wish that everyone has had since childhood. That's why things like doing the proposal correctly is super important. Um, with asterisks, obviously. Because you only get one chance at these things. The silly little things that feel like nothing in the first 6 months, that only happens once. And you could be completely objective and rational and conversational about it, but that's not romantic. And at the end of the day, everyone wants to look back on those first 6 months and be like, oh, what a romantic time. And this drama and that drama was part of it, but we got through it. And there's a temptation for very intellectual and very honest people, when meeting someone who's also that way, to make everything intellectual and out in the open. And if it is, then there's no mystery. And you miss a lot of things when you don't have mystery. There's depth, there's chance, there's tension. That's probably number one. And excitement. If you know where you're going, then you're not excited with each step there. You take things slowly and play it how it should feel. It's an interesting lesson, I think, for anyone who's. I keep wanting to reference to a group of people that's like us, that's a little bit too on the honest spectrum, whatever that is, a little bit too clued in to social interactions, which ironically usually makes you a person who's not very good at them. I think most people think people who are slightly autistic don't understand social interactions, and I think it's more likely that they do, and because they do, they can't do it subconsciously and reflexively. It has to be conscious. And because of that, they either choose not to do it or flub, trip over their own toes, and then it fails. So they, us, whatever, people like us.
Yeah,
You still need to pretend.
the mystery aspect and the leaving something unsaid is something I struggle with. It's not the biggest struggle because it's, at least I'm not feeling, the most important aspect. Like, I'm working on the masculine strength, and like one of the things which is a big no-no that both she and I have done is talk about our exes.
Why is that a no-no?
Well,
where'd you get that idea from?
I definitely had the impression that it was don't talk about your ex to your current partner, which is probably more in the sense of like don't wax lyrical about them than taken as a concept to an extreme of don't talk about them.
I could see how it could be a bad thing if each of you are unsure about the other. You know, like a first date conversation when you're not quite sure, you're not really sure at all, and you're trying to convince the other person or whatever, then yeah, it'd be a bad move. But if you're not playing the I'm trying to convince the other person game, if you're actually two people who are interested in each other, trying to see where it'll go, then at that point, talking about exes is an exercise of trust. an open thing. Open.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
doing very well with the words today.
Yeah. Well, so she'd asked me about my ex, and I'd said I will answer any question you ask. Like I will be honest. All right, that's a big thing to me. Like I get uncomfortable in board games that require lying to other players about what cards are in your hand or acting against them in secret. It's like that makes me uncomfortable. So
We
actual
know those are the exercises for you.
thing to dig into another time. But
yeah,
yeah,
fun to be had in personal time.
yeah. So from what I said, she was a little bit concerned that when my ex finds out eventually, she might do something and like show up at the door or try and cause trouble. And
Ah, interesting. Were you surprised by her reaction in this way? That take, I mean.
I wasn't expecting it, but it wasn't really surprising when it happened. It was like, yeah, I don't know what she'll do. Neighbours, turn down your stereo as you're driving up.
Can't hear it.
Oh, I can. I'm
Um,
surprised you can.
no.
But yeah, so
I just think it's interesting that she picked up on that, and it took
mm,
you a very long time to sort of see how she was behaving was actually an attempt to keep contact in a romantic way.
Well, one of the things that happened more recently was that I talked about how I'd taken the step of finally blocking the ex on Facebook because I'd left the Facebook chat open
I don't
as a
think you had
means.
said
Sorry?
that. I don't think you had said that actually, but that's good.
Yeah. So I'd left it open because allowing contact with her son. But I'd been getting more and more sort of frustrated about her trying to use it for everything but like give me relationship advice type things. And I said so basically as much in a couple of messages to her and then hit block. And of course that's the last I've heard of her, which is nice. But she'd sent a few voice messages and I was chatting on the phone to the girl I'm dating now about this, and she asked if she could hear them. Okay, let me put it on the speaker and hold the phone by the speaker, and yeah, so it's like no secrets, and she agreed. Yeah, she sounds a bit weird to be just trying to discuss that kind of thing with you, and just as a person, the way she talked, and it's like, yeah, she is very immature, and like I talked about remembering her complaining that she couldn't find any friends her own age. She had friends who were 5 or 10 years younger than her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a bit of a red flag, though.
Yeah, at 30.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want it to be the other way around. You know, being punching above your age in terms of.
Yeah, I went to visit a friend today who's 60.
You're doing better than me.
Interesting guy. Very interesting guy. One of those people who's lived in many different lives. But anyway, so yeah, and she told me about how unexpectedly her ex had contacted her out of the blue. She'd had his number blocked, but then the work phone didn't have it blocked, and he called her crying. It's like, okay, what's happening? Okay, I'll meet you at a coffee shop. And she's a very compassionate person. And this guy was basically, he couldn't conceive of how she was over him. And it's been a year or two since they were together, and he was begging on his knees for her to come back, and she was like, no. But there were elements of how she described him that I could see in my past self, in my past relationship, that please love me dynamic. And at one point I recognized myself falling into a bit of that, and mentioned that I was there, and it's the sort of hard, soft personality side dynamic that passes with the masculine. I think there was a good analogy I thought of to describe the relationship. It's like feminine and masculine. All right. Well, we have men and women. Men are more to the masculine. Women are more to the feminine. And both have parts of both, if that makes sense, like the yin yang symbol. But there are sort of strong and hard elements to every woman and soft and gentle elements to every man, and so on. But I got the image of like, okay, to start the analogy, you can be a strong and independent person, and men or males are generally better at this than females, but you can't be a man in a particular sense until you are a man with a woman. And it's like you are independent people, and then you come together, and through that you become a man. And you see it in the way language used to be talked about, like getting married or sleeping with a woman was talked about as becoming a man. And it's, I think that's a derivation of the idea of learning to have a relationship and differentiate into the masculine role a bit more, is coming fully into that. And without that process, you cannot know what a man is, even. And like, I was discussing this with her too, and that there's a whole process to go through here, not in a tick boxes sense, but in a personal growth together sense. It's two independent people who are meeting and growing into each other in a sense. And like, I got the image of the man as the shield, sort of facing out at the world to defend from it, to take the necessary resources and so on. So he's facing out with the hardness. She has a hard back, so she can take some of the load, but he takes more. But she's looking inwards toward the softness, and he has his soft side, and he needs her to support his soft side so that he can be stronger and harder for the outside. Like there's a two-way thing there. And both take part of both roles, but with that support and specialization, you can do both better. Like I'm naturally a gentleman, and like at the moment I'm single parenting my son, and he loves me, and that's great, and there's big cuddles and wrestles and so on, and like I have to fill the nurturing role for him. And so I definitely have that, and I'm developing my sort of masculine strength to face the world, but I will still have the softness. And I think that I would need a gentle woman to, in order to be the man in the relationship, so to speak, as it's like the words woman and man, if you trace them back linguistically, the word for male used to be werman, as in, or no, wereman, as in werewolf. So that was like man wolf. So wereman was the male, woman was the woman, or the female, and man referred to humanity or person. So it's like you start as a person, and then you differentiate into male and female, and then take on your masculine and feminine aspects more and form that union. And it's like the line in the Bible that says it's a great mystery is right on.
Yeah, like what does it mean to be a man without women?
Yeah.
Like if there wasn't any women and there was only men, what does that really mean? If like I am a man. It is always in contrast, not
Mm.
opposition to the feminine. And I've certainly noticed this. It's like when you're growing up, your instinct is to be a bit of both. But when you have the other, because when you're married, it feels like, oh, I have the other side, but that's her or him. I can be just this side now. I can
Mm.
just go all in on that. And you're trusting, it's like you're trusting the You know the bonds of the relationship are secure enough, so you trust everything to the tension between.
Mm.
Rather than trying to balance both within yourself, you know that you can go far out onto one spectrum and she can go far out onto the other spectrum
Far out
and then
on both,
negotiate
in a
back.
sense.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
well, no, no.
split out and then negotiate on both.
It's like the idea of the man and the woman psychologically intermingling like that. Like, by
Ah,
differentiating out your hard side and your soft side, rather than just having to be all all in balance, if that
yep,
makes sense all around. You differentiate them out and you show your softest side to her, so your harder side can become harder because you have something to protect. And like,
your softer side becomes softer too.
yes, exactly. The hardness
Yeah,
and the softness distinguish each other, and so the harder becomes harder and the softer becomes softer. And that's that feels right.
yeah, yeah. I like the idea of of it being two sides of an object because it works well with the analogy. When you're young, you try and be both at once, and I think when you get into a real relationship, you end up being either at different times,
Mm.
but being better at both of them when you do it. I think it's been really notable for me to watch this happen for my wife, actually, is that because of this change, she's become far more capable in standing on her own feet and doing her own thing and being more conscious
Mm.
generally. Whereas when she was younger, she was both a very unconscious person, not super capable of standing on her own, but also ridiculously combative with everyone all the time. It was very much two at once and both wrong. And
Mm.
I think I was the same, is that I stood up for myself a lot, but in the wrong times. And I was too weak and needy in at the same moments. Whereas now it's each thing finds its place in the right time. And I
Yeah.
think that there's something about having another person with you to bounce back off consistently.
Mm.
Everyone wants to self improve, but I think it's always better to be two people, not just self improving, but improving each other.
Mm.
It's a positive feedback loop in an even better way.
Yeah. Yeah. And like another thing that I'd mentioned was like when you meet someone, you in order to interact with them at all, you have to have some preconception of how they will act, right? You have a mental cardboard cutout image that you project onto them. And in some ways that's insulting because that's not who they are. But in other ways it's inevitable because you just met them. You don't know who they are. And people
Well, even
who
if for decades, you always have to simplify down a person. You can't
mm,
encapsulate all that they are. You can't even encapsulate all that you are.
mm. Yeah, and so I mentioned basically that concept that as we get to know each other more, we will find that we are each not who the other thought we were in some ways, and that like I'm expecting there to be issues. Like there was something that we came across that like it happened while I was texting her at work on the lunch break, and I won't go into the details, but I commented, oh, okay, the relationship's hit the first hiccup. And she said, I'm not calm enough to talk about this now. And that she needed to go off like, good, good, yes, recognizing that, yes. It's like, that's a good strategy. That's a good pattern and so on. And then, so I gave her the space. I said, what was it? Like, I'll leave you to figure it out. Let me know when you want to talk. And then later she was ready to talk, and it turned out that my initial thought of what was wrong was way off the mark, and I'm just thinking about how much to talk about. We talked it out, and it turned out to be a non-issue in a sense. Like, the thing she was worried about would definitely have been wrong to do. And I could see where she was coming from given past experiences, just like my own, which I've had my own fair share of being worried that things would go a certain way. And she shared it, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's not a problem because of this. Like, if that thing happens, this is how I will deal with it. This is how I've dealt with similar situations in the past. That this is how I will be. And we both know that words are cheap. That I could say whatever I want now, and that doesn't add up to any actions. But it's a reassurance. And then the actions come later when there's an opportunity to.
So all things going well then, eh?
Yeah. On the second date, I arrived with a rose, and I'd picked some elderflowers and put them on the dash of the car to hopefully make it smell nice. I don't know if they did. My nose couldn't pick it up, but it was more sensitive. And she really liked the rose. And I love her expression when I brought out the bucket of M&Ms.
Oh, it's such a hard left turn. Do I even want to know?
She likes sweet things.
Okay. What? Yeah, that's sweet.
Well, not many of we didn't end up eating many of them, but it's like I love the expression. But anyway, so we went to dinner, we went ice skating, and she can actually ice skate.
Ice skating, that's a very good one.
Skating around holding hands. I love that. But yeah, and then her aunt and uncle asked about the rose, or her aunt asked about the rose, and so on, and so they wanted me to come around for dinner sometime, which won't happen soon because she's out of the country for the next 2 months to go back to the Philippines to organise her grandmother's 80th birthday and have a family reunion.
I was going to ask if that happened before she went away.
Yeah.
Guess not.
Yeah. Wow. So, there hasn't been any other opportunity to meet them, and she gets back, we'll organise a sort of dating routine.
And auntie, did you say?
Sorry?
Aunt and
uncle.
Did you say?
Yeah.
Mother and father not around?
Not in New Zealand.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. More conversation for off the recording.
Okay. Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. But
it's great that all this has happened, and
yeah,
I wonder. Probably likely that it's got something to do with all this progress you've been doing.
I think so.
And it's really good to see some positive results.
Yeah,
at the end of it all, this was probably your goal for the longest time.
Yes, definitely. Like going into the dating scene, I was scared of finding the bad sorts of women that get talked about on the internet among men, and it's like, while I haven't dived into those circles, I've seen enough clips to have an image of what they talk about, and
it's certainly pervading the culture at the moment.
Yeah, and what was the thought I had? That you do all the work to get ready for a relationship, and then you wait for lightning to strike. You make yourself ready. You can't go and find it. It's kind of like fishing. Like, you can't catch the fish bites the hook. Or you stand on the hilltop.
You can work on getting a better reel and better bait and better equipment and all of that kind of thing. Better spots.
It's like, I asked her what the speed dating
Such a bad analogy.
Yeah, it is.
It's quite demeaning, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're trying to hook another fishing rod.
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be like a really good analogy there, but that's just.
Yeah. But I asked her what the speed dating event was like from her perspective, and a reasonable portion of the men were tipsy.
Really?
Yes. Yes,
Oh wow, that's not encouraging. I
I'd
wouldn't be
been
encouraged by that at all.
yeah, I'd been approaching it as you get 3 minutes with each of the women that you're meeting. Hello, this is me. I'm looking for a long-term relationship. I have a son. I'm a 30-year-old engineer. This is me. I'm not interested in a fling, both emotionally for myself and for my son, and so on. It's like, I am here looking for a relationship. Like,
Mm.
that is the goal of being here. It seems like a lot of the other guys were just clowning around and hoping that they'd make a connection just from that.
Maybe. I would say, actually, that my guess on that is that they were nervous.
Yeah, that was
And
Dad's
because they
comment
were
too when I
nervous,
talked about it.
they were drinking. And you being the one guy who both wasn't drinking and wasn't nervous. Um, and yes, I know you were nervous, but the point is the fact that you would sit down and lay it out like that
Hmm.
doesn't say nervous at all. It says calm, confident, knows what he wants,
Hmm. And I was dressed
which
nice and
is
sharply.
which makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were the only one in a suit, that would have been like
It wasn't a
very
suit.
well
It was a
close.
nah. It was a blazer that looked like cloth, unlike most suits. Like most suits don't have weave to them. This was pure cotton, and a blue dress shirt.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. It looked
Close enough.
suitish in the dark, probably.
Yeah, yeah, because I imagine probably the guys would get a drink, sit down on the table, have a drink, next table, have a drink, next table, have a drink. And then by the time they get halfway around, they'll be, yeah, plastered.
Oh no! You jump from table to table. They would have had to start drinking as they arrived, and then or before they arrived.
Oh, you couldn't take your drink to the table?
You could, but you couldn't get new drinks between tables. There was one break in the middle.
Right, so they would have drunk before they started.
Yeah, yeah,
Several by the sound of it.
yeah. And so yeah, she ticked me and I ticked her, and she, while I was at the sailing regatta and was walking around in the dark chatting to her on the phone.
Don't fall off the boat.
No, this was back on shore.
Ah, see, I like to imagine that you were out on the boat, like under the stars in a hammock or something.
No, but oh, she made a comment about not seeing anyone else, sort of asking if I was what I thought of that, and so I told her that I'd already sent an email cancelling meeting up with the only other person from the speed dating who I'd um, arranged to meet up with because I didn't want to think of more than one woman at a time, and so it was kind of like. Yes, yes, I agree. Exclusive. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm already doing it.
Yeah, chips in the basket. Yeah, if you've got an out, then you're not trying.
Mm,
You know, if
yeah,
there's an exit option, then you're not together.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you guys are in the trial phase of like trying to figure out will this work, will this not. But I think that this is why marriage and engagements were such a big deal for such a long time.
Mm,
That the point is, okay, we're really serious about this.
mm.
We're not just messing around. We don't do that.
Well, in the
Because
Philippines,
yeah.
there is no divorce in the law.
Go Philippines. Yeah, they know what they're doing.
More to discuss after the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. I see that. I see that face. Given your history, I get your hesitation, and yeah,
Um,
conversation
more
there,
than
which I'm
that.
sure we don't want to do that today.
More than that. But
I know, I know. But
anyway, back to topic at hand. So
I like my based opinions.
yes, I know you do. And no one will ever sway you from them
Uh,
unless they can convince you.
no,
Which
I don't
good luck.
actually believe them, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
We're too far the other way. Someone needs to be like, "Ha, no," and then when everyone goes, "Ah, that's too far," it's like, all right, what's not too far then? Negotiate with me, because I'm not negotiating from the position of where I want you to be. I'm going to go way out here, make you flip out, and then we'll meet in the middle where I actually want to be anyway.
Yeah. But
Love doing that.
where was it? Yeah, so she grew up in the Philippines and like, third world country. I sus I don't know what socioeconomic level she was at over there, but she felt like it was a relatively simple life. Like you ate the food you got on the table because you were happy to have food type thing. Not that
Mm.
she ever went without, but the fact that she never went without was a thing that she said.
Right, it was
So
notable.
yeah, yeah. And she's currently living with relatives who are business owners, shall we say, and who need to do a little bit of wining and dining of potential clients, and there's flights around the world to different relatives in slightly glamorous locations. So she's experienced both sides and wants to live the simpler side. She'd like to have a garden and some chickens and so on.
Mm.
And
By choice.
yes, knowing both,
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
experiencing both, and my reaction to that was, yes, my childhood dream.
Yeah. The distinction that's really important there is I would like to live the simple life, knowing that I could live the other one if I wanted to.
Mm.
There's a difference between I'll do this because it's all I can do, and I'll do the simple thing, but I could be extravagant if I wanted to.
And having a romanticized version of the simple life.
Yeah, but it's not romanticized. I think brings in notions of not quite understanding it.
Yeah, and that's
Having someone who's grown up with it,
yes,
like she understands it.
yes,
Probably more romanticized for you than for her.
yes, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm not sure precisely
again,
where on the spectrum between one end and the other on that she would be most comfortable sitting. Like, she'd probably want to still go overseas and see relatives, and they live their life. And so, if I go with her, I'll have to learn what it's like to eat in a 5-star restaurant.
Yeah, you're not going to be full hermit all the time.
No. But at the same
and that's
time,
good.
she has been supporting herself off her own wages and studying at the same time and managing her money. And so it's like, good. Like, not
An adult.
credit
Yes,
cards.
and
Yes,
an adult.
an adult who is still soft and gentle and kind and wants to be a woman.
Yeah, not jaded and cynical and bitter.
Yes, and so
I have a pretty big bet why she's that way and not the other way. But
okay, later.
we'll step right over that one. Yeah, why are Western women so jaded and cynical and bitter, and people from other countries aren't? Yeah. Who knows?
One of the first thoughts I had when I met her was that she was a sweet, innocent girl, and I'd hate for a nasty man to get hold of her. And yeah, I still stand by that.
But she wouldn't let them within a mile of her.
No, she the way she described it, not in a boastful. Sorry.
Sweet and innocent isn't stupid and naive. Those are different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
From what she's said, she could have if she'd wanted to, as in there was ample opportunity.
Yeah, and she's not dumb.
Yeah. She knows what a shallow relationship is and isn't, and has no desire to go there. Where, like, I don't care if it takes a year to court her into a lifelong relationship. I'm there for the lifelong relationship, and 1 year or 6 months, however long it takes of courting to get to that. Yeah, investment well spent. And then the investment continues because you never stop building the relationship as you grow and so on.
I wonder how the tradition is there for timeline in terms of proposal and stuff like that. Because I know with my wife and her family, an early proposal was okay with them, but
Mm,
they wanted a long delay between proposal and marriage,
mm.
which we didn't do. But you know,
Yeah. The comment that she's made was that, what is it? Relatives who got pregnant got engaged immediately, and the wedding was planned.
yeah, yeah, in that kind of culture, yes,
Yeah, heavily
psycho,
Catholic. Yeah.
yeah, shotgun marriage right away.
Yeah. I finally learned the meaning of shotgun wedding recently. I thought it was that the shotgun was the celebratory mark of the event, but apparently it's the
No,
the father of the
no,
bride holding the shotgun behind the groom to make sure he carries out his end of the
yeah,
bargain.
yeah. You did this, you pay for it now.
Yeah.
You know, we don't let you get away with it.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
both.
gone are the days when men protected women.
I want to protect her.
Well, we're trying to make it have a comeback. We
Mm.
really are. I feel like I need to clarify that statement because people are very stupid these days. I've been thinking a lot about the sort of men versus women nature of modern culture. And one of the things I've sort of really come down to is that the entire institution of marriage and the waiting till marriage and all of this kind of traditional stuff, we in the West view that as, you know, patriarchal, as it was the men handing women to other men and this kind of crap.
Mm.
Um, that entire system, if you pay attention to it, is set up to do nothing but benefit women and protect them.
In its positive form, things can always be twisted.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but who else does it benefit when the bar to sexual access is lifelong commitment and child rearing and financial investment into women?
Mm.
Like that is for women, 100%.
And satisfying her
Because
family that you are worthy of that.
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And yes, that's corrupted in many ways by corrupt people, but that's beside the point. When you take away the bar, you're not helping women. You're making it way worse because now men get what they want and they don't have to give anything in return.
Mm.
Just as a note, that was for women. And men get a certain bonus out of it in a lot of ways. In terms of like mental health stability, it's really good for us.
Oh yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
like it's a massive predictor of longevity and all kinds of other things. But
Mm.
yeah, if you want to live if you want to live a long time, get married.
Yeah. The need to be needed. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's part of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
on
a
the
shield
needing
with no one
side,
to
yeah,
protect. Yeah.
yeah, and no one to protect my vulnerable side.
Because we
Yeah,
have that, and we can't
yeah.
protect all sides. We
That
need
analogy is
someone.
really good.
Yeah.
I quite like the little hand diagram. That works really well.
Yeah.
And then children go in the middle.
Yes. Yeah. You make the children in the middle, and then gradually let them out into the world, or expose them to more of the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a lot of that. Had
Yeah.
great fun with the kids the last wee while. It's going to be really interesting to have three. And it's going to be really hard because with two and two adults, like each one can have a child and hold them.
Mm.
But when you got three, it's like, oh no, we can each be holding a baby and have one on the floor. That's not, yeah,
Mm.
it's a bit out of our hands at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, uh, when I introduce her to my son, it's like my plan at this point is she starts coming over for dinner
Hmm.
and playing with him, and he can teach her how to play Minecraft, and um, I think it'll work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, or we'll go to the park and throw a ball and that sort of thing, and just exposure and getting to know and so on, and then maybe she can babysit him for a while I go out somewhere and just sort of gradually him getting to know her more. So
Hmm.
that when eventually it's like okay, you know, such and such. Well, she's going to be living with us now. And, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exposure.
Yeah, and like she talked about wanting to build a relationship with him early on, like that was in the first date, I
Mm.
think, and wanting to build a relationship with my family, and yeah,
Yeah, you're lucky to find someone like that just out there. Yeah, yeah, good. I'm sure you understand very well. For the modern audience, people, are going to go, "Oh my god, how did he manage that?"
not me. It was not
Astrology,
me.
astrology. That's
No,
how it
no, no,
happened.
no.
Yeah,
Prayer.
yeah, yeah. Praying to the astrology gods. Yes,
No, 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 no.
I know
Literally,
it's a joke. Slash S.
she prayed to Jesus to find a nice, gentle man for her, and I prayed to Aphrodite to help me become the kind of man who finds the woman who's right for me. And now, when I sort of pray, thinking, "Am I doing all right?" It's like, "Yeah, kid, you're fine. I got you ready. Go away and do it."
I think I literally nearly spat my coffee out. I wasn't expecting that. Well, she comes from the Catholic place. She's actually Catholic. Okay, cool.
Not Catholic, Baptist now.
Ah, okay.
She had a rebellious
Ah,
phase
we're close enough.
and still disagrees with some things that they say. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's more details for me to learn about that, and plenty more details for me to share about the rabbit hole
Yeah.
where I prefer to live
Looking forward
spiritually.
to looking forward to meeting her. To be honest, looking forward to having a chat at some point.
I'm looking forward to introducing her to you.
Yeah, I promise I'll be nice. I promise.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm really bad at promising that. So maybe. Well, I feel like that's what a catch up. Been
Yeah,
busy, found
yeah,
life partner, just like that, out of the blue. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. You don't wanna whatever, count your chickens
Well,
first, but
there was something I saw, like, if you go on the internet and look up anything along the lines of how do you find a girlfriend, the answer basically boils down to work on yourself in various more detailed forms, and then
yeah,
people go out and
if that
try.
answer.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
work, and they get disillusioned and try again because what else are you going to do? And then eventually they give up. But there was someone who sort of addressed the missing part of that. It's like, okay, how long does it take? And
Yeah.
he recommended a time frame to have in your head of at least 5 years if you're starting from way down.
If you're looking for a life partner, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like start working on yourself, and you'll probably find a partner within 5 years.
Yeah.
It's
You work
not.
on yourself, you become someone valuable,
Mm,
and you spend some time being at places where you might meet
mm,
someone by chance.
mm,
And then you just wait,
mm.
you
Yeah.
know.
I found the speed dating really good because it's like, okay, I know that these women are here looking for a relationship. That gets the first big hurdle out of the way, and I can just say, I'm looking for this. What are you looking for? Okay,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound that compatible. I'm looking for this. What are you looking for? Oh, okay. Well, worth meeting up for coffee with. I'll tip you. Without saying that out loud, of course, but yeah. And then you go around the room and just like, okay, well, I wonder if I'll match with anyone. And it's like, it gets the worst of the social anxiety hurdle out of the way, at least for me.
Yeah, it honestly sounds like quite a fun experience. I'm sort of bummed I never got to do anything like that.
For you, as someone
My
who likes
history is,
interrogating people, I can believe it would be.
yeah, no, I grilled my wife for like an hour and a half straight. It was great. And then I don't know if I told the story on camera. I'll do it now. It's funny. Yeah, she asked me for coffee the next day. I said let's have dinner that night. And then I grilled her for an hour at dinner, and then I said, "Let's go to the pub." And then we grilled her for another half an hour, and then I invited her to a private sauna. Um, and then I think I invited her to a hotel after that, um, which she said no to at that point because she had her final exam the next day, which was a good excuse, but obviously that wasn't the reason. Which I'm glad she said no to, by the way.
Mm.
It was a good line in the sand. There's a few others along the night as well, which was good. She was able to draw boundaries and hold herself in. have enough respect for herself to say no to things that she wanted,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And
um, which is
yeah.
important.
Yeah. One thing that I've found positive and sort of from both sides of it is that when talking about future plans, we've both in that sense and in other senses, we've both said no or yes. It's like I talked about how my plan for having a house was to inherit my parents in 5 or 10 years. She wasn't a fan of that idea, so I was like, okay, well, this is what would be required to save for a house. Okay, let's do that then, because we'll probably be able to save her entire income, which, as a nurse, that's not small.
Mm, I wish I had that much money.
Yeah, well, you need to save up a
I'm
lot for a
currently in,
house.
yeah, I'm currently in a lot of debates about that. I'm assuming that's the deposit. You're not
Yeah,
looking at buying one outright.
well,
Yeah.
you'd need to. A mortgage is something like $1,500 a week, I think. So,
Fortnite.
well, no, oh, that's not so bad then. I'll need to double
Yeah,
check that.
I did maths on that. It depends on what you're getting, but it can be around about $1,000 a fortnight.
Okay, if they use Fortnite, then that makes that number a bit easier. Because my plan was like, okay, here's rent, here's how much we're saving, here's how much the mortgage will be. Build up as much of that as reasonable before you switch over to mortgage, but make the rent plus savings equal or greater than the mortgage. So then when you
Yeah,
switch, it's no biggie.
yeah, I'm sort of in the middle. I've been debating about this. I'm in a situation where I could save enough to afford a mortgage in, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. Um, from zero, and I'm starting from zero. But I still have an eternal debate of like, is that something I even want to do? Do I even want to buy a home?
Mm,
Um, which I feel like is something for another day. We've probably run long enough, but yeah, I've got a bit of a hesitation there of, why is that something that I want to do?
mm,
There's always is a problem in my life is that I have to know from first principles why I want to do anything,
mm.
and it's really hard for me because established wisdom is generally pretty good, and then I have to reason up from first principles about
Yeah,
why I should do this thing, which I know is good for many different reasons, but does have some downsides.
yeah, yeah. Like I don't like the housing market at the moment. And there is a difference between buying a house as an investment and buying it as a house to live in. But still,
Yeah,
I would like to wait a few years before buying anything. But at the same time, that's the time to save. So yeah.
yeah, it's a good time for that.
Mm,
It was sort of a wee bit of a thing. I had conflicting opinions about the recent election for that reason. Because we got in a party that's going to make things better for the economy. Yay, great. We're not going to be, poor and losing our jobs. But because of that, they'll do everything they can to keep the house prices increasing because
mm,
they own houses.
mm.
So it's in their best interest, and the housing bubble has a lot to do with the economy at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you see the
um,
final count up results?
no, I haven't looked at a while. Has anything changed?
Winston Peters is kingmaker.
Again,
Yep. Yep. By 2 seats. They need him.
son of a
He
bitch, he better not fuck us over again.
he's our Trump.
He is.
Yeah.
But
Who's actually
last
competent
time
ish. Yeah, competent.
he think Trump isn't competent.
Well, okay, he looks competent.
He hasn't been painted to look incompetent.
Yeah, that too. But
That's probably a better one.
he's a professional shit stirrer, and people who like that vote for him, I think.
I like that, but I didn't vote for him. I just hope he makes the right choice. He got mightily screwed over the last time, and he ruined most of the country because of his wrong choice. I
Mm,
really don't want that to happen again. But anyway, because of that, I was sort of had this half thought of like maybe it would have been better if it went the other way. Just like bring on the collapse. Let's get this economic disaster over with, crash the housing market so we can start again from scratch, wipe it all away.
Well, the way China's going and the way the ripples are likely to go out from there, I would be surprised if the housing market was that far away from crashing.
Oh, you had to bring that up, didn't you?
Oh, we need some good pessimism.
Okay, well, here you go then. I think the second that China's housing market crashes, they declare open war. And I think at the same time, both the US and the Western's economies will crash as well because of manufacturing. And they will declare open war in retaliation because nothing's better for an economy than war. It's really, really good at getting us out of recession.
I don't
And
think
they
we'll have.
know it.
I don't think we'll have World War Three. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a whole lot of little squabbles, like if China Taiwan heats up,
What?
just like Israel Palestine's
Yeah.
heating up.
Well, it's the same thing. And the Ukraine situation is just proxy war between the States and China. So
China
it's the
backing
same
Iran
thing.
and Hamas.
I was Ukraine.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, China's backing Russia.
yeah. Israel Gaza is
I
proxy
haven't.
war
Yeah,
between Iran and US in a sense.
yeah, and Iran is allied with the Chinese, as far as I'm aware. They're on that side of the fence.
Mm.
None of this is official, obviously, but it's very clear that they are the superpower behind the scenes. And the fact that Russia is a proxy state for them is kind of a indication of they are a superpower.
Mm. Mm. I helped a friend move house last Saturday, and
What a segue. Love it.
oh, it'll make sense in a moment.
Oh, okay. Right.
They were moving out to the country, sort of half an hour's drive through the rural areas out to the southeast. So they were, where would it be? South of Lake Ellesmere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that area where it's just rural and there's no sort of thoroughfare. And his girlfriend's mental health took a few notches up with getting out of the city.
Yeah, it's nice out here.
Yeah, but I made the comment that I was feeling quite positive about the current great or the coming Great Depression.
Yeah. I'm trying not to think about it too much, to be honest.
Well, the advantage of being a pessimist all the time is things happen. It's like, oh, that wasn't that bad.
That's true. All of my thoughts about it are very, very dark. But I'm also not preparing for any of it because I kind of don't want to bring that reality into the present. The second that you start planning or prepping for something that dark, that becomes your determined future in terms of the way your brain thinks about it.
Yeah.
So I sort of go along planning my life as if it's all going to be okay because it keeps my nervous system in check and my mental state stable, but knowing that that's a possibility and pretty likely one in the background.
I kind of take the opposite approach of like panic. Okay, it's not that bad. Okay, it's only this.
Yeah, because you have that consistent panic because you're planning and preparing for the horrible outcome.
All 100 of them.
Yeah, but I don't have any panic at all.
Yeah. Because
I'm not planning for them. I'm planning for the world to continue on as it always has. Until such time as the world ends, I will act as though it intends to spin on. And I know what's coming. I know it's bad, and I can see all of that. But I sort of cognitive dissonance that a little bit. And just pretend like it's all okay, because then I can live my day-to-day life without being depressed.
I would like to think that steam engineer and nurse are two career paths that would be in demand in the future.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm a farmer now.
Yep.
It's good fun. But, makes good money and we have plenty of meat, you know. If all of a sudden we can't supply, milk, the 20,000 litres a day of milk that we're currently supplying, and we have to pivot, like we have, I don't know, 350 tons of meat
Ooh,
on farm at any one point.
that's one store of value.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, yeah. The average herd is it's like 1.5 to $2.5 million for a herd of cows.
Managed by how
Like
many
you would
people?
think that there's three of us.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries where the numbers aren't quite that big for that few people.
Yeah, we're an unusual farm. Most farms have more people, but we run
Oh,
it
okay.
pretty light.
Yeah.
Um, but that's fine. Like it's good. We're good at what we do. Um, and obviously we have other people come in and help with contracting and all that kind of stuff. But that's not for any kind of day to day thing anyway.
Hmm.
Generally, so yeah, it's three of us, and one guy that covers days off every now and then. When it's required, when we have extra stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, you wouldn't think that when you look past, you go for a drive and then there's a paddock there and it's got some cows in it. But each cow is a couple grand. And when you have, 700 of them, all of a sudden you see how that math adds up. Like,
Hmm.
oh, that's 1.5 million in that paddock.
Yeah, and as long as you've got the land, it's like the cows are getting
Yep.
old. Oh, put a bull in there. Make some young ones. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Every single year we make 150 to 200 new cows. And
Mm.
we just send them off, grow up. 2 years later, they're in the herd. There's another cow. And yeah, they die all the time. All kinds of reasons. We'll kill some cows if they're not producing very well, if they're getting sore legs all the time, all kinds of things. If they've got health issues, this, that, or the other thing.
Mm.
I sell them to the freezing works. They go away on
Yeah.
a truck.
It's
We get
the
most of our money back, and then they go become meat for your McDonald's
mm,
dinners.
yeah. It's the deal of domestication. Like we'll protect you from starvation and from predation and from as much unpleasantness in life as we can. And in return, we'll take care of you and eat you. Well, in return, we'll eat you eventually.
Yeah,
And like you can look at it as, oh no, it's slavery, but it's like, okay, there's a deal there. There's a two-way
yeah.
negotiation,
Well,
and
it is slavery. Like there's no way around it. If that was a conscious creature, yeah, it's slavery, and it shouldn't be okay. But
yeah, that's conscious creature.
also,
Or
well, I
mm,
honestly, from being someone who's worked with animals a lot now, my hard line between humans are conscious and everything else is not is way more holes in it than it used to. Like I'm a little nervous about that, to be entirely
mm,
honest. Um, but that aside, um, this this is not optional at this point in
mm,
human. You know, we're at the point in our societies where we can see the future coming, and we can see that in the future morals are going to be different, and we're going to be judged as immoral.
mm,
And that's all well and good, but we're trying to live by the future's rules now with all this climate shit and then the vegans and stuff like that. And it's too soon. You have to remember that human beings evolve culturally. Culture is evolution. Means we will get to a place where we look back and judge, and we look back and go, wow, they did the immoral thing, and we're so much morally better now. But you have to evolve to get to that point. You can't have a world where slavery is horrible and immoral until it's no longer necessary, because it was necessary for most of human history. And that's horrible, but it's just how it was. And people are going to go, oh no, how can you say that it was necessary? It was just people dominating other people. You have to also understand the not just cultural evolution, but psychological evolution too. The fact that we now view the other as human is a development. Necessary might not be the right word, but inevitable is definitely the right word. That was going to happen and was always going to happen.
And anyone who
And
claims that it was one particular ethnic group, say white, that did all the slavery,
yeah,
has not looked at history at all. Like, there was
yeah,
something I heard
it's
about,
dumb.
was it
It's
the,
very recent, the belief that someone of a different ethnic group is human.
I can't remember which one it was, but they would castrate all the male slaves they sold into a particular area, and like this was a Middle Eastern country, I believe, or Middle
Yeah,
Eastern African
yeah,
country.
there's been some horrific
Mm,
stories,
yeah.
and the white Western one is not the worst by far,
Mm,
not even the worst by volume. And then at the end of the day, it's like, we went to Africa and got slaves. Like, who sold them to us? Oh, it was the Africans who did it to themselves and each other forever. Yeah, okay. I don't want to get
mm,
into that. It's you know
yeah, yeah,
it's a political debate, and I don't like it because of that. But
yeah.
morals are convenient, and if they're
Mm.
inconvenient, then they're not held. One day we'll look back and we'll go, "Oh, what we're doing to the animals is wrong," and we'll be able to say that because we're able to not do it anymore.
It's funny, I'm thinking
Because
about
the
it from
thing,
the opposite end of the circumstances when morals become too inconvenient or large blocks of
yeah,
existing morals, and then it all gets simplified down.
yep, yep. It's the thing about after the war, you can have the right of judging what was acceptable and what wasn't.
Hmm.
Wartime is not the time for that. You and it's a horrible thing,
Hmm.
but it's just accepting reality pragmatically. Is that your ideals are cool, but when we're all going to die because of your ideals, they're stupid ideals.
Hmm. You can go die
Doesn't
for them
matter
if
how
you
right
want.
they are. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how right they are. It really doesn't. If it's going to end the whole game, then it's not good, and it
Hmm.
needs to be delayed. We
And
will
then
get to better places, but that doesn't mean we're there now.
that whole question gets totally murky and probably unanswerable when you look at um, people who are fighting by any means necessary, including objectively immoral ones, for a cause that they think is right and just. And it's in their perspectives, they're working for a good thing against ultimate opposition, and bombing a hospital, whether it's a strategically good move or not is another question, but bombing a hospital is a justifiable move in their minds, and it's like, it's absolutely better for that kind of action to be prevented and made unnecessary. Like, you open avenues for people to have their concerns addressed. You don't block them at every single turn until they feel they have no option. They are the ones who will carry that on their conscience, that carry their karma, however you want to phrase it. They perform the action, and that is their fault. But at the same time, like, if you railroad someone in towards a particular outcome because you don't want them to take any choice, essentially, then eventually you're left with the only choices you can't prevent. And the dreadful
Like you're
algebra.
leading somewhere with here with this. There's an example in the background you're not quite bringing forward. Like, I don't know. It's like you're leading somewhere with here with this. There's an example in the background you're not quite bringing forward. There's an example in the background you're not quite bringing forward. There's an example in the background you're not quite bringing forward.
I'm just thinking of the terrorists who are fighting for what they believe in around the world. Like, there's an example from a book that's vaguely related where I got the terrible algebra quote, if I'm quoting it correctly. What was it? In some Terry Pratchett novels, which, oh, they're all fun and games, and yeah, they approach really hard questions with humor and comedy. But it's like the dreadful algebra of you die or I die. If I fright you brutally enough, I will walk out of here to my wife and child. It's like,
Mm.
how brutally are you going to fight? If if
Yeah,
you,
what are you fighting for?
yeah, yeah, when the other person's fighting to walk out of there to see their wife and child, like, okay,
Mm.
both of you know that you're trying to forestall an army getting to your family. What do you do? Like the Viking raiders say, it's like hypothetically, well, you know that because of the way your society is structured, if you don't raid and pillage, your family will starve. And sure, there can be good times where it's easy and bad times where half of your party's killed. But that's the way your society is structured. If you don't do it, your family will starve. And then there's the other side of these fuckers are coming to rape and pillage us. Let's kill them. It's like, okay, two people with families trying to kill each other. It's a nightmare scenario in many ways, but it's also life. It's like, what's order for the spider is chaos for the fly. You
I like that.
you don't get to have a right answer sometimes. You just get to make a choice. And no choice is the worst choice. Because
Yeah,
then
it's
someone
what's the
else
thing
chooses.
about in a massacre there's no decent place to stand. But I like the example of the Vikings and the villagers.
Mm.
Because it's the case of one can just say, oh, just throw down your arms and go do this or whatever, or we could negotiate and find a peaceful solution. But it comes back to that those people weren't ready for the next step. I don't want to use the phrase they weren't evolved enough because that's rather demeaning, but it was the case. Their societies, their situation, their circumstances, their psyches, their development wasn't ready to be able to come to the solution that we modern people would prefer.
If they were
Our
raised now,
sensibilities, yeah, it's our sensibilities judging
mm,
them. We
mm,
look back and say that's horrible and immoral.
mm.
They wouldn't have thought so at the time.
But if they were
The
raised
losing side
now,
would.
yeah, if you take a child from then and raise it now, or a child from now and raise it then, they would grow up in their time, and they would be of that time and exhibit those same characteristics as the people of that time. Like, it's not a case of those people being different to us. It's that the tools and the environment they
The culture.
were working within. Well, not even just their culture. Like, if you're a very peaceful and very, you could say, enlightened culture, and the next tribe over are the Vikings, you're gonna get pretty brutal pretty quick.
Yeah, this is why I worry about China.
Mm,
Like a lot. Now we're all sitting here in the modern world thinking that we're all so peaceful and enlightened. And we've got a Nazi state effectively brewing on the other side of the planet that's way more powerful than the Nazis ever were. And we're all like, it's fine. We'll buy their clothes. Um, and then, yeah, we're sort of sitting here going, well, nothing's wrong. Oh, there's wars, but we're not involved in those. Like,
mm. And the thing
we need to
is,
be brutal
well,
for too long.
in a sense, we already are. I'm in. I'm thinking of the
Mm.
way that people with PTSD are more often traumatized by their own actions than anyone else's. It's like
We're
I didn't.
ramping up. I'm seeing a lot of people getting a bit war hawkish with Ukraine.
Mm.
It's been rather freaky to see the kids of my co-workers. There was a moment when it was popping off pretty early on that one of them showed me their phone, and it was like TikToks of pro-Ukraine propaganda,
Mm.
and the kid was like all about it. Like, yeah, go get him. Wow, that's terrifying. Pro-war
Mm.
children, but the culture's moving that way. And there's a reason why half of the political spectrum in the United States freaked out and went that way real hard. And I just think it's interesting that the other half was like anti-war, but as is always the case, it's that way until it's not. Half the
Mm.
country was real anti-war in the last World War until they weren't. And then it was all hands on deck, let's go. And you say what you want about the great moral good people who won the war, but the West was really, really brutal and horrible to the bad guys.
Mm.
And it's not like, the soldiers themselves had much choice. They weren't exactly immoral people.
Well, look at the soldiers who got exposed to Agent Orange, and then think, okay, that's what we did to our guys. This was the stuff they sprayed over Vietnam to defoliate forests so
Yeah.
they could.
I remember someone having an interview about like grubbing the inside of those tanks. I don't remember who it was, but I remember listening to an interview with a guy who was just like, "Oh, just scrub the inside of these big vats. No mask, no protections at all, just scrub it." And it
Mm.
was like where they kept it because they didn't know what it was. They weren't told what it was.
Mm. Yeah. It's like the idea of a flamethrower, even like the concept of that as a weapon. Like, I want to set those people over there on fire.
Yeah, not kill them, just put them on fire. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like, it's
yeah,
one thing to say, okay, bullet through the head, you're dead. It's another thing to
yeah,
say, I set half of you on fire with something sticky.
yeah. Napalm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I went to pretty far lengths to win those challenges.
hmm.
I mean,
And
nuclear bomb came out of that conflict.
yeah.
We're about to kick off this big one right as the AI revolution started. What's going to come out of that? I
Oh.
don't know. I think we've already had the first one dropped, and I think that was the big pandemic recently.
Mm.
I think that was the first shot across the bow of the new nuclear weapon, and no one's quite realised that yet. A bit of conspiracy part, but part of me in the back of my brain says that there's a switch somewhere that's going to kill one population or the other, and it's too late already.
Yeah.
Like a
It's a
mutually
little
assured destruction, except it's the entire population of the other nation.
it's a little poetic that it's Guy Fawkes outside with rockets going off.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder treason and plot.
Yeah.
No, there's no reason that the 5th of November should ever be forgot. Except I forgot. I didn't know what that was. No fireworks here.
Yeah.
Sad.
I'm just thinking of, did you see that scene from Doctor Who where, was it the scale model of war?
Yes, I think we talked about that
Mm.
last time after the show.
Mm.
We had like a 45-minute discussion about the different good philosophical points from Doctor Who. Yes, I remember saying to you that was a really good episode, and it's something that's always stuck with me. Truth
Mm.
or consequences. Our model of war.
Yeah. Because that brutality, we've got a veneer of civility that we've grown up with
Yeah,
over that. But that brutality is still in all of us. That it would only take the right circumstances to scrape that off and then or to puncture it. Like it's not necessarily weak, but it's definitely puncturable by the right circumstances, and over time it can be worn away and so on. And
Volatile.
I think that to try and pretend that that same brutality is not there is foolish. That you, if
That
you
makes us
pretend,
more dangerous.
yeah, because then if it escapes, if you are sufficiently motivated, like common trope in so many TV shows, is like once the bad guy sufficiently motivates the good guy, they access the superpower or whatever better, and then they win. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that superpower is not a superpower. It is your willingness to bite off that guy's face
Yeah, do something evil.
and then wake up the next morning and scream in horror at what you did. It's like, do you want to be torn apart from the inside like that, or do you want to acknowledge, okay, that exists. I will punch him in the kidneys and make sure he never has kids. But I will do it because I have to. I will choose it because I have to, not because I couldn't contain it anymore, and then it ran rampant and I ended up covered in blood.
Yeah, I do worry about the West in that way because not just have we pretended that we're all better than the violent people of the past and we're all more enlightened and peaceful and we don't do any of these things anymore, but we've also never experienced real privation. So we live in this fake world and we have for a long time. And I think we've got cracks showing up now. Like the big rioting that happened over the United States, I think is an amazing example of just all it took was a small justification. It was a small justification, and then just riots, burning buildings, attacking everything in sight. Because we're not quite sure what we are capable of or what we can do, what we should do. Because the story we've been told is clearly not being bought anymore. And the question is really, does that make us more dangerous to our adversaries or more dangerous to ourselves? And it's both, but yeah, more one to the other.
If it's
Because we're like an
directed.
unstable person. You know, we're sitting there shaking in the corner, or we will be. You know, when we get to the point where we're about to break open into true chaos, we're going to be like a person barely containing themselves. And you feel it coming and we'll be ready to go. And if the brakes are taken off, I could see Western individuals committing the worst atrocities that have yet been committed. Because the last major wars, people had suffered real sufferings in their life beforehand. So there was some breaks there.
Yeah, like
some understanding. And we just, for the entire lives of everyone who is military age, have been lived without privation, conflict, or serious anything.
On the internet, you see jokes about the Geneva checklist, or it's not a war crime the first time, and it's like, ha ha, oh god.
Oh, I actually like that joke, but that's really bad. It's not a war crime first time. It's good because it rhymes. Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all well and good to have a rule list of what should and shouldn't be done after the fact, but it's never going to be applied in the moment. It just won't. You know?
Yeah. Like there's on a deeper psychological level of how people are acting, there's a rats in the cage analogy I've seen that if you take a lab rat and electrify the floor of its cage every now and again so that it gets, say, shocks that are acceptable to the ethics committee, then the rat will try and get away from it and eventually just ignore it because it's really unpleasant, but you can't get away from it, so you might as well just ignore it and deal with it.
Yeah.
Unhappy rat. Put two rats in the cage. They will fight because they sort of get angry and then they point their anger at each other.
They have a direction,
Yeah. And we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot of that these days with the tribalism in Western society, and it's just like, you're unhappy.
Well, that's interesting. We're being whipped into a frenzy to fight each other, and then at the same time, there's growing threats on the horizon. I wonder if that's intentional.
Oh, yeah. And then suddenly you can unite
Yep.
in a.
Yep. One big
Yeah.
attack, big enough, false flag is always the way. And
Or
then both
even.
sides fighting each other can turn all of that aggression right now and go, you're the enemy.
Or a not false flag, whatever that is, a real attack that's let
Yeah,
slip through
real attack.
deliberately.
Yeah.
That'd be even
That's
more.
happened too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There were a couple
Yeah.
of towers that might have happened to, or three that fell down, but only two were hit by planes. That's really weird.
Yeah, well, you could have. It could be false flag. It's the I don't know part that's the scary part about that. I think
Mm.
the fact that we don't know, and it's been how long. I don't know how many people would argue about that if it happened now. Would we even all rally around to go to war, or would we be like, huh? But then again, everyone rallied around the last big national emergency, so it seems people are pretty pliable to do what they're told. Although I think they might have burnt a little bit of the capital on that one.
I think they've burnt a fair bit of the capital, and I think that
Yeah.
it's like you can get someone to do what you want by threatening them, but the next time it'll need to be a bigger threat, and then the one after will
Yeah.
need to be a bigger threat, and eventually you
And
won't
not
have a
just a
threat
little
big
bit,
enough.
like an order of magnitude bigger.
Mm.
Because like COVID or whatever was 2% lethality. If they
Mm.
came out and said like, "Oh my god, it's a new thing, it's 5%," I think people would still even do what we did last time. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't think so. If it was 10%, maybe 20%, yes, we'd do it again. But like a small increment more, even twice as much. Oh, it's 4% lethal, twice as deadly as COVID. I don't think people would even accept what we did for COVID now.
Mm.
Well, then again, it would start being, oh, this is unknown. And I think people would still be like, yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And people have been talking about how much trust has been lost. Like the amount of people who are skeptical of vaccines, period, now.
Mm.
Not just that one, but all of them.
On the
No
sailing
trust has gone
regatta,
up. Huge.
well, oh, okay, two segues from that. On the sailing regatta, I was on the woman who was crewing for us, so she was fulfilling one of the roles on the boat. She's a med lab technician, qualified and in the medical field. And she was rather surprised by how many people in the medical field were just, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. Don't ask the questions, it's fine. And she was like, no, there's a question to ask here that should be asked and answered. And like the dismissal of the question was concerning. And
yeah, the authority figures told us not to question this. So
yeah.
I've actually been wondering a lot about science in general with this, or the scientific establishment, is that it is very much the case that anyone in the scientific establishment, I think medical field is included, believes everything that's handed to them from the scientific establishment and will disregard everything that is presented from outside the scientific establishment, regardless of anything to do with either of them. I was thinking about this with your astrology thing earlier. Like, why is this thing that people reflexively dismiss? Because it's a thing that people reflexively dismiss. That's why. That's what crackpots think about. Okay, I'm going to dismiss it. There's no like, hold on, why don't you actually try and approach this scientifically? Nope, dismiss out of hand. Not even going to try.
Mm.
Which isn't very scientific. One, there's something. It's religious. It's dogma. There's no other way around it. You have your belief set. Anything outside of the belief set is therefore wrong and illegitimate.
Yeah.
You a real scientist would be someone who looks at all of the things through a scientific lens, the same way you're describing the sort of engineer's view of these things
Mm.
throughout history. We have this world set up where some things are authoritative and you listen to those things. And
Mm.
everyone listens to those things if you're a good citizen. If you're not stupid, you listen
Yeah.
to the authority.
Yeah.
And then anything that is not from the authority, which is anything outside the established hierarchies, oh, that's for all the stupid people, or that's for all
Mm.
the crazy people.
Yeah.
So now we have a system where all truth comes from authority. All things that are claims that are not from authority are therefore conspiracy and stupid.
Mm.
And that's the guiding principle of our culture.
There was something I saw recently about. Okay. The word myth these days is often used to refer to a story that is not true. But that's not a good way of looking at it.
No.
Because myths, in trying to interpret myths, a lot of people have tried to say that they're derived from certain events. So they're sort of cultural recollections of certain events. But the way of looking at them that I was reading about described them as it is the events that are derivative from the myths. The myths are the sort of abstracted out pattern, or more real than the real things because the pattern recurs. It's like, okay, how real is a flower? Well, this flower will exist for a period until it rots away. Okay, here is the concept of a flower. How real is that? How many flowers are there in the world that match that concept to a T, like Daisy? All right. That concept is in many ways more real than the flower itself because it
Yeah.
exists over a longer time frame and is much more durable.
Yeah, it's the Platonic ideals thing.
Hmm. And that the idea of a myth is similar to that. And people like to think of us not having any myths today because we're so enlightened, but no, your myth is the idea, the thought structure, because we need a structure to work, to use thought. We need a structure to think within, and that's what myths are. And so our main thought structure that we are given in this society is the idea of progress, that things start bad, there are holdouts that adhere to the old way of doing things, and they are then defeated by the new innovator who comes forward and makes things better and
Yeah.
revitalizes things, and it sort of steps up like that.
Progress and authority.
Yeah, which is a good myth in certain circumstances. Like if you look at a school system, there are some ways in which that's applicable where you improve slowly over time with effort.
Right.
Right?
But not every change is a change for the better.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that I talked about recently with a friend of mine about elections. We have a left wing party, which is criticism and progress, and we have a right wing party, which is, conservatism of tradition and running the ship properly. That's the case for most countries with a democracy. And each side serves a function, and going back and forth is how things progress. But I sort of made the point of a 50-50 split of time between each party is not ideal, because conserving and running things the way that they are has a far higher hit rate than we're going to change things. You want it outsized towards the one side. You want things to be conserved most of the time with small changes. and then changed back if they're not working.
Mm.
You don't want to be constantly pushing for change all the time, particularly if you don't have the corrective mechanism of stop, look at the thing, oh, that didn't work, we're not going to do that, we're actually going to go back to the way things were when they worked.
Mm.
And the problem with the progress myth is that most new ideas are bad ones.
Mm.
Things that work are actually really hard to come by.
Yeah.
And like our earlier conversation, bounded by our time and place in history, the thing that works isn't always going to be the perfect utopia. In fact, it's never going to be.
Mm.
Ever. We want the perfect place where everyone has just as much as everyone else so no one is unfairly advantaged. Well, that's cool, but that's not going to work. So right now, some people have to have more than others if we want anyone to have anything. And yeah, that's bad. It is. But it works. For now, for our point in history. We can't be getting ahead of ourselves. Otherwise, we run ourselves off a cliff. Even with your school example, I would argue that this myth of progress has done schools harm in a lot of ways in recent
Mm.
times. They've been going downhill really rapidly because their myth of progress has changed from small incremental steps of trying to improve the learning system to getting rid of everything that's old and flipping everything on its head.
Well, I was
Now they're
thinking
not
of.
teaching people to read from the letter.
Mm.
They're
I, w-
teaching people to read from the word, and then they're bringing in all this
mm.
stuff about social emotional learning, and it's failing.
Mm. I was thinking about it from the school from the perspective of the student rather than from the perspective of the school itself.
Yes, on an individual level, this works better.
Mm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
on a societal level, it doesn't.
Mm.
Problem is that it may work well for a person, but when you apply that ethos to the political sphere, things go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, your characterization of it as a religion, I agree with completely because, like, in with that article I was reading about the way the mythological structures work, he was talking about H.P. Lovecraft and his fiction that he wrote, and he was described as a rationalist materialist who took it to its logical conclusion. Like the idea, and he didn't even twist much. Like the idea that we are in a cosmos of cosmic scale cycles, and we are this tiny blip on a mote of dust around an ordinary star, and we'll be here for a little while, and then we'll be gone, and it will mean nothing. In that scale, right? That's a
What a
rational
story.
argument. And that then he based a horror story around that idea and the idea that there are things for which we are that much of a blip, that they just happen to have a nap every now and again, and we happen to pop up during their nap, or something along those lines.
The
But
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a great example of that.
mm,
We're just minding our business, and all of a sudden, Earth gets demolished because of a highway going up or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, sorry, don't care.
yeah, and the idea of progress is not a rational argument. It is a mythology, and it has its high priests of the great Steve Jobs and his Apple, and it has its martyrs who are destined to fall in service of it, in the sense of who will heroically defend their their outdated methods and fall in the progress of the myth, in the playing out of the story. And they often play it to a T. Like the creationists who argue that evolution doesn't exist and keep finding more and more and more sort of God of the gaps type arguments of, okay, there's no way an eye could have evolved. It's too complicated. And it's almost like the evolutionary biologists and paleontologists, like, okay, we'll look there next. And so then they find a dozen intermediate steps and say, okay, that's how. What should we look at next? Oh, okay, those footprints over there? Yeah, no, that's not what they're not what you think they are. That's we tested them. No, and oh, this spark plug in a rock. Actually, that's concrete, and so on. There are great mysteries out there, but they aren't finding them that much. And sometimes they possibly are, but then the scientific dogma takes over, and like the progress myth must carry on. It's religious, and you can't question the religion. That's heresy, and heretics get burnt at the stake, or at least socially ostracized. And that's
Yeah.
what
We
we've
like
seen.
to think that we're not religious anymore, but the problem is that human beings are religious creatures. Everyone thinks religiously.
Hmm.
You have to believe in something.
Yeah.
It's not optional. This is how your brain is structured. You have a belief in something. What's that line about? You have a myth. You should know what it is. You know, you don't want to find out you're living a story or a myth that you don't want later,
Yeah.
because you're living one whether you want to or not. It's, you know, of course, when I say that, people are going to go, oh, how do you know? How do you prove it? And I don't really want to go into that. I guess sometimes you just have to say things and hope people take you at face value. You have to believe in something,
Mm.
and believing in nothing is a belief in something. It's not like a logical, oh, you must do it. It's just how your brain works. And
Mm.
the greatest example is that the people who believe in science the most don't practice it at all, because they don't believe in science. They believe in the myth of science
Mm.
that they've created, which has become its own establishment. And because it has its own establishment, it has its own power structures and priests in the same way that you
The
described.
priests wearing their white robes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whatever myth we have is what's going to get acted out into the culture and decide our future, which is
Mm.
incredibly, terrifying. At least with the myths of old, they were stable.
And diverse. So you could look around and say, okay, well, that doesn't apply to this situation. Not even in a conscious way, but it's like, oh, this isn't like such and such, but it's like such and such. Like,
Yeah,
how often do we say that an event was like a narrative from a movie? It's the same thing. But if all the
yeah,
movies are the same story, basically, then what do you have? And so instead, in traditional mythologies, you have a wide array of jealous character wins, jealous character loses, unfair victory occurs, and the loser is left unhappy for the rest of his life and just sort of trying to do his best. And it's like, okay, which pattern fits your situation? Okay, now you have at least an idea of how you can move forward. It's like plans A through ZZZ. Um, how many plans do you have? Or just A through Z. All right. At the moment, we've got like A through D with progress and a few variations. If you've got A through
yeah,
Z, then it's like, oh, well, that didn't really work. Well, I'm in this sort of pattern right now, and okay, what about this? And then you tweak it for your situation. Okay, you've got something to move forward with. But if you have to start from scratch, if you start from no myth, what do? You've got no map. You've got no idea where
yeah.
you are.
We're in a real troubled place because, given our rational state of most of the West, we've dug pretty deep into our psyches in a lot of places. And we've dug deep into myths and culture and trying to understand everything as rational people do. And in doing so, we've got deep enough or far enough down where things start to get a bit weird. I've had this experience of when you delve into the depths of yourself or of any very large societal topic that revolves around people and their psychology. At the deeper levels, things become different, like they're playing by different physics rules. And I'm trying to. It's like you reach a place where everything's one thing, and it's also everything at once.
Mm.
The physics, it's like a singularity almost. You come to a point and you go, okay, there's not much further that I can go. And everything sort of collapses here. And it's also unstable.
It's
It's given
almost.
me hesitation about the concept that digging for truth in the world is the way forward and the way out.
It
I'm actually
almost.
not quite sure I believe that anymore.
It's just making me think of. I've heard from certain people who talk about higher dimensional consciousness in a spiritual sense, and that's a whole concept to approach from many angles, and yeah. But the idea that one analogy was if you're playing a virtual reality video game and your character dies, like, oh well, start again. If you truly believe that you are that character and you're playing Grand Theft Auto, then a car accident is a very bad thing. And you forget that you're actually sitting on a couch playing the game, but that was how this person was characterizing reincarnation. That it's like from a higher perspective, you could look at it and say, oh well, my incarnation died on a cross. That's sad. It was a bit painful, but oh well. Or it's like, this is everything I am. I don't know any different. This is the end of me and my world and existence, and the very different experiences. And I'm wondering if your conception of what it looks like when you dig deep is a little bit like that same perspective difference. Like, you need a certain breadth of comprehension, just like a certain diameter telescope can only resolve anything at a certain level of detail at a certain distance. Like, you've got a certain sort of angular resolution based on the size of a telescope, physics.
Hmm.
But we have a certain sort of breadth of understanding that gives us a certain size of telescope to look at things with. And you'd go too far from where you are, you reach out too far, and you can just, oh, come on, camera, focus. You can just barely make out that there's something there, but everything looks the same. And it's like you're almost like looking at one color out of the spectrum. If you look at certain scenes with only one color, like exactly one wavelength of light available to you, then it's like, well, there's nothing here. You add a whole bunch more and suddenly, oh, everything makes sense. This is a perfectly ordinary scene. But we have this tiny band of what we can perceive compared to the breadth of existence. And so beyond certain bounds that we can perceive, it stops making sense. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's the way I think about it. Like, we're here. We're dealing with this. We're learning this.
That's
Yeah.
that's sort of exactly what I ground out at.
Mm.
It's interesting. I've had this massive interest in psychology, and one of the big myths, guiding myths of our time, is that the truth will set you free, which is great. You know, that's what drives scientific enterprise, what drives all this rationality. And yeah, I mean, it comes from Christianity, all that. But in looking at psychology and digging deep in that, I've sort of come to the point of like, oh, human beings gonna human being, and we evolve to be what we are, and we're going to keep evolving to be whatever we're going to be. And there's not really anything that you can do about that, because what we evolve to be changes all of our culture, and then our culture changes what we evolve to be. And this is not a ship that anyone can steer.
Mm.
There's nothing we can do. It's going to be what it's going to be, and it's going to be what it's going to be because of what it's been before.
That sounds like karma.
I yeah, sounds a bit like determinism as well, which I'm not a big believer in either of those things. Interesting that you went with the karma.
Well,
I know that we believe in it being a sort of moral judgment, but I know that actual karma is without any kind of moral connotation. It's just cause and effect.
yeah, on a
It's the same thing. Yeah.
deeper
Another
or
word for
shallower level.
determination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the word means
Determinism.
consequence of action, as I
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like determinism,
Mm.
basically, but in the opposite direction. Um, when you ground out there, you sort of go, oh, what difference will any great amount of learning about ourselves do? Because it's not going to change really anything. And even if it is, maybe that's just the next part in our forever evolution of figuring out what the hell's going on and what we are. And that's what all the great myths were, and that's what our great myths now are, and whatever the great myths coming forward will be. I sort of ground out and got to this point of like, oh, I'm just a person here to witness this part of the endless ride that is humanity. There is no great truth for me to find that's going to change anything. And even if I do, judging on history, I'm not going to experience anything, any kind of consequences of it in my lifetime. You know, all the great religions were founded hundreds of years after the Savior died. And in their lifetime, they had no experience of any of it. They were just being them. Not that I think I'm one of those people, but sort of beside the point, that's the most extreme example. The only real place where meaningful change to humanity could come from exploring the truth is in physics. But I'm also hard pressed to say that that's been a good thing for existence, that humanity's discovery of fundamental physics.
I wonder if it's the wrong scale to look at.
Yeah, yeah. When I've sort of ground out in too big of a scale,
Hmm.
and I think my point of like coming to a singularity is something along the lines of
More
a world without
fireworks.
limitation. Yeah, I heard that one. A world without limitation. You was that quote about, what does God lack? It's limitation. It's also perspective. You can't have
Hmm.
perspective without set bounds, and when you look too far and too wide, you lose grasp of everything.
Hmm.
We're meant to be limited beings, and perhaps trying to solve the biggest problems in humanity is a bad move. Maybe something along the lines of what you're doing is better, where you're solving a very small, concrete problem one at a time. That makes things better. Hmm. I sort of dedicated half my life to, I don't quite believe those words, but that's beside the point. Spent a lot of time in my life looking as far and as wide and as deep and as dark as I can, and sort of come to the sense of, oh, right, we're all effectively unconscious people running on these systems, and that's not going to change. And it's the interactions of these different unconscious systems and motivations that produces not just current behavior, but then the behavior of all of our children, and then culture as a manifestation of that, and how that impacts back and forth. we're not in charge of this game. So maybe I should stop worrying about it. It must be getting a little late. I think
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock and we're
I'm
going
getting
for
I'm
2 hours.
oh, Christ, I'm going off the rails. 10 o'clock. I should have been in bed like an hour and a half ago.
Well, should we call it
This
a
is no
day
good.
there?
Yeah, I think I'm starting to make less and less sense, and my mind being more and more profound, which is always the sign that it's time to close. Um, I can never tell if it's my best work or my worst in moments like this. But we don't have anyone to judge us yet, so I'm not worried.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh well. Good night.
I'm happy. I'm glad that we had a good catch up, and I'm glad everything's worked out for you. It's
Yeah.
it's been a bumpy ride, and I
Yeah.
know it's not certain yet, but I'm happy nonetheless.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, and we're both moving forward under the assumption that it will work, and we
Yeah,
both know that it won't always be happy.
cool. Well, we'll say goodnight, and
Yeah.
hopefully next time we record, I won't be in a hospital. So we'll just have to see how that goes.
Yep. Night.
Bye.